I catastrophically ballsed up a shirt deal, and I remember the chairman whacking me into his office and just saying, "What are you doing? You got to pull this one out of the fire." And he was like, "Put it out of the fire, or you're gone." And it was like, and I've sat in that office with the head coach being fired, and I know how it feels.
If we pick up a job today for a chief exec of a football club, we will immediately begin to draw up a very long list of people that would be relevant for the role, may refer us to somebody for the role. They may have a link that would give us an option of a referral of somebody that they recommend for the post.
All agencies, all rights holders from a football perspective are pitching brands right, left and centre in terms of front of shirt, sleeves, sponsorship, etc. Okay, well, what's that gap? Where's the gap? Our love and our passion is just working across sports in general and creating some really cool partnerships.
Welcome to episode 4 of The Deal Room with Sporting Group International and Sporting Jobs. My name's Ed, I'm asking the questions, and we've got our experts here as well, providing the panel. We've got Adrian, we've got Harry and Ian. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Yeah, we're all good.
Good, thank you, Ed.
Very well, thank you.
Slightly different this episode, as we're on episode 4 now. I know you've been pushing it out to all your contacts and the audience that you've got on LinkedIn and all over social media. And people who know the business already have kind of gone, I've got a few questions about what you've been up to. So we're kind of doing a Q&A, if you're all right for me throwing some questions at you today. Yeah, happy?
Sounds good.
Make sure they're not
Ian didn't look
too
quite
tasking.
Well, I can't. Don't blame me. I'm literally asking the questions that I've been sent. So we'll see what we get from your listeners and your viewers. Let's start with question 1 then. So, why would a football club why wouldn't they just advertise their own jobs? Why would they use an agency? Because they could put something out there on, any Indeed or wherever, couldn't they? Really? Why do they need an agency?
Okay, I'll take that one. Look, I've hired hundreds of people in sport in my career, and the hardest part is getting good people in front of you. And every works in football clubs say, "Oh, do you know what? I've got a brainwave. Why don't we put an advert on our website? That's going to be literally generates loads of people to come and have and apply for this position." Yeah, that's great. I'm not a fan. And bear in mind, when I was at my last club, West Brom, we didn't have a HR function as a unit of people. We had one individual that doubled up to do HR. So when I say to them, right, I need to find a head of sponsorship or a head of hospitality sales, they're like, well, look at you blankly and say, well, okay, well, you better crack on then. So I didn't have a great affiliation with sending an advert out onto our website that effectively would get us the best part of 90 CVs from all around the world of people claiming from Mumbai to Uzbekistan, saying that they're great for our head of hospitality position. So I always, and it called me out, I could speak to lots of people, and that's hence why we ended up getting the recruitment business started. I always went agency route, and it was always a battle for me to argue with the CEO and the chairman. We need to spend money on fees. And I tell you why, because I've got targets that I've got to achieve that are eating away at budgets that if I don't get the right people in. So unless I can select the right people quickly and headhunt them and get them in, we'll not hit budgets. And every time I hit budgets as a result of hiring good people. So
That's the reason why it's hired me twice, Ed.
Agencies are a godsend for a very progressive individual that wants to build teams, because time is money and you're busy doing that many other things, selling yourself, running the team you've got, weeding out the people that aren't good enough and getting rid of them, bringing new people in. If you can have someone that says, here you go, here's 5 people, they're absolutely on the money for you, and you turn around and say, well, yeah, okay, get them in.
I can. I'll add to that as well. Being rights holder side, working similar to Adrian, especially when it comes to that sort of senior level. When it comes to like some, sales manager, commercial manager, whatever it might be, head of conference and events. You need that individual that's got that expertise and got that experience. And like Adrian alluded to, you'll put a job advert out there, and don't be wrong, you're going to get a huge amount of interest because you're obviously working for a sexy industry, a club that's very well known. Obviously, football clubs have this stigma that, the players are getting paid so well, so is everyone else. That's not the case. So you're just going to get every man and their dog trying to do that, and that's just wasting your time, everyone's time. So to be able to have a recruiter like Sporting Jobs, and I used Sporting Jobs when I was at Birmingham City and hired some unbelievable candidates. Josh Davis, who's currently at Birmingham City, is their head of sponsorship now. It just saves so much time. And the recruiter will go out there and find these people for you, where you can't necessarily do that working for a football club, because it's a bit of a conflict of interest, whatever it might be. So, yeah, I've always had a huge belief in agencies, 100%.
A couple of other things as well, Ed, is you've got to think who's actually actively looking. Again, look at you guys when you were both working for football clubs. Were you trawling adverts every day and looking? Actually, no, they were successfully, performing as commercial people. So you've got to look at passive candidates and kind of be aware that actually we're actively going out and headhunting candidates, and we've gone to meet a club. We're understanding where they're trying to take, where this role is going to lead to, all of the understanding around that. And fundamentally, then we can sell that to candidates. So, Adrian, let's look at you when you were commercial director at West Brom. We've got an opportunity with Aston Villa down the road. This is what they're looking to achieve. This is how they're changing commercially. These are the sort of different avenues that they're looking to grow their partnerships in. So not only have we got a real understanding of what they're looking to do and sell an opportunity to somebody, but we're also going to go and find candidates that aren't looking. The best people, I've always been told since I've worked in recruitment, the best people out there aren't actively looking. They're successfully going about their business and are usually very happy in their role.
Okay, I think we've covered that one very nicely. So let's move on to rights holders then. Why would they use SGI over some of the big agencies, the big boys? I don't know if we're naming names, but I'm going to. This question does, such as Sport 5 or Wasserman. Why use SGI?
Yeah, I think the Sport 5s, the Wassermans, the CAAs of the world, they've got a place, and they've done very, very successful and worked with some of the biggest rights holders globally. I think when it comes to SGI, is that the fact that we can add that personal touch. We can be very nimble in our approach. You're always going to get, it's like, I'm managing director of UK Business Agency, CEO, but we will always support and get involved in every opportunity, every deal. If the team are working opportunity, we'll jump in with them and support them and help them and guide them along the way. If I meet a particular client, we met with 2 rights holders last Tuesday, I believe it was, looking at retained opportunities. We'll meet with them, but that won't be the last of seeing us. We'll continue that process right through to the end. Whereas, like most big conglomerates, you don't tend to find that with these big businesses because they've just got so much else going on. We're not like that. We'll get involved from start to finish, and we'll be part of that process from start to finish and be there at the end to help execution and delivery, and that's what we do.
I think another thing as well, just to add on that one, is DNA of any business is really important, and the people that represent that DNA even more important. And the bigger the companies are, the less nimble they are, the less kind of reactive they can be to environments or trends. But fundamentally, we want to sit, whether that be, someone that's representing us at an administrative level, or whether it's someone sitting, at board level, we want to make sure that whenever we are in front of clients, candidates, rights holders, that they just breathe our brand. And that's slightly harder for the big co's to disseminate that amongst the workforce. There will be some very well-paid senior officials in these big companies, of course there will be. But, we're all literally at the coalface. The size we are now, we are doing deals, we are sending emails out, we are making phone calls, we are just doing everything, designing presentations. And we are middle of the road now. We're not like in a bedroom with one person, trying to crack a few deals. We have a very, very good group of people around us, but we still keep that authenticity, and that's important for us.
I think as well, sorry, just last point on that one, is that you'll tend to find a lot of these big agencies, they've delved into other areas of sponsorship, like not just acquisition, but they're getting involved in activation, whereas we've rightfully not got into that area. We've literally stuck to our guns, right? This is what we are really, really good at. Not that we can't do activation, because we can, we've delivered on it, but we want to be that extension to a sales team, a commercial sales team. We want to be going out there, like I said previously, understanding and getting under the bonnet of a rights holder and the opportunity they're looking for, and then going and finding the brand that can really bring that opportunity to life and create a real authentic partnership. So we are purely acquisition, and we've got old school mentalities as well. You'll find that picking up the phone is a little bit of a dying art. It's not in our business. We'll it's like all stones unturned. Normally, typically 6 to 7 different touch points to try and get hold of a particular brand through cold call process. And picking up the phone is very much part of that DNA and part of what we go through. And I think you'll find that doesn't happen in a lot of areas of business anymore, but we've kept that sort of mentality.
Ian, you mentioned that he's managing director for the UK. Of course, we've talked about this in previous episodes, that actually you're expanding to new territories as well. So this question kind of relates to that, really. So what made that decision to expand to Europe?
Well, that was driven by a deal we did. So we secured a couple of shirt deals in the Premier League for Kazoo, and then they very quickly decided that they wanted to kind of open their operations up across Europe, which then dovetailed with their strategy to acquire shirt deals within territories that they had, specific interests in, and they were the major leagues. So we've got obviously Serie A, Italy, we've got League One in France, we've got Bundesliga in Germany, La Liga in Spain, and that just meant that we were sent on a manhunt to just try and find deals. And we bear in mind we probably spoke to 80 clubs in that period. To try and identify what was the best value for money, what was the best media return, who had got the right ownership that was going to complement the brand and not cause issue. So we looked at that and thought, well, the deal creation and the deal making in those territories is no different in the UK than it is in Europe.
Right.
Okay, there's a language issue, and that's why we've hired people in those territories. They have comprehension of the language, they understand the customs, they understand how business is done there. And, we've seen some kind of abrasion in the recruitment business in certain territories where, paying fees in Spain and Italy is kind of like not the done thing. It's like very much, what's a little bit, not nepotism, but it's very much someone knows someone that will get the job kind of thing.
Right,
and it's like, well, we don't need to pay a fee with that. Well, John down the road is, cousin of Sid, was going to get the job. So we've seen that, but Europe is huge opportunity because, the leagues that are out there are commanding, good revenue in that commercial space. And we just thought, what, this is a global game we operate in. We can't just be seen as a UK-based business, just cracking deals in the UK. So Europe was a bit by chance, but we never look back now. We've done deals out there away from that automotive arrangement. And it's now proving that we have to be in that market.
Makes sense. I think question 4 is probably a Harry question as it relates to recruitment. So how do you go about finding candidates?
Similar to SGI in terms of their process, we have a very succinct process as well. So we've got a team of 5 people now that are day in, day out, non-stop talking to people in the sports industry and the network. So we start with our network. If we pick up a job today for a chief exec of a football club, we will immediately begin to draw up a very long list of people that would be relevant for the role, may refer us to somebody for the role. They may have a link that would give us an option of a sort of, a referral of somebody that they recommend for the post. We then go through a very thorough headhunting process, and that would be bound by a meeting that we've had with a client whereby they will have probably highlighted a number of places that we should look. Sometimes we work with a cricket client that maybe, look at the rise of the 100, for example. Now, a lot of cricket clubs are looking at football and rugby type backgrounds from people that have sort of led a bigger sort of function and maybe something that has more of a venue feel to it. So again, depending on the brief that we take, that will lead our headhunt list, whereby we will then go out to market, like Ian just mentioned, hit the phones and speak to people about the opportunity that we've got. I think another thing that we've mentioned is that by going to meet a client and getting an understanding and a full brief of the venue, the team, the culture, the fit, these are all things that we can then really sell to people. And then, we'll obviously round everything off with doing a full advert. We will get applications out. We will, as I say, look for 7 touch points across every candidate that we try and speak to. So we'll make sure that we've got to ring fence everyone there, and then produce a detailed shortlist, kind of like bound by the data and everything else that we've sort of added around that, really.
This is probably a follow-up to that, really, actually. Is there a non-negotiable in the recruitment process? What is an example of one, if you have it?
We've got several, but one is client meetings. We won't work a role unless there's a really specific reason as to why we can't hold a meeting. We won't work a role without meeting a client. And look, unless we work 50% of the time and retain projects in sporting jobs, but a lot of the time, 50% of the time, we're working for free, on a contingent basis, whereby actually we do all this legwork. We do weeks of, strenuous work, whereby if we don't place a successful candidate with you, it doesn't cost you anything. So we think a fair bargain there is that give us an hour and a half of your time. Let us come up. Let us visit the venue. Let us get an understanding of where this person's going to sit, who his reports are going to be, who his manager is, and what their background's like, what their sort of challenges are day to day, what the opportunity looks like. Getting that relationship and that sort of trust from a client is really important, because then a couple of days into your search, if you're getting a lot of problems, you've got the confidence to go back and go, Mr. Client, everyone's saying this, nobody wants to do this, what can we do about this? And actually it gives us a real tangible sort of thing to go at. So meetings are non-negotiable, and I think you share that sort of value with brands and rights holders too.
Yeah, I think both recruitment and sponsorship and any sales operation, to be perfectly honest, if you're not meeting people, then you're not building that connection, you're not building that relationship. It is a non-negotiable, has to be done.
And this might sound like a ridiculous kind of comparison, but someone comes to your house and they decorate your house, right? And they do an amazing job, right? 9 times out of 10, you're going to go back to them. Yeah. So it's exactly the same with what Harry and Ian do. It's like, all of a sudden, it's like they're kind of it's kind of like a business friendship. Yeah. You know, Harry will tell you the amount of people that he's got in his WhatsApps that literally are just not talking to him about recruitment. They're talking to him about, you know, the games. They're talking to him about, you know, HR problems internally and how would you deal with it. Same with Ian. You know, Ian had an instance where we informed to put some technology on Teams, which literally is a transcript piece of AI. Oh yeah. Where literally it's got, I think it's called Read AI, is it?
Read AI.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, it just pops up automatically. And Ian has been asking every one of our clients that we speak to, are you happy for this to be on here? And one of the clients turned around and said, Ian, I cannot believe you've asked me that. No one has asked me whether they give my permission to have this tool on. And anyway, we don't use it that regularly anymore. But just the fact that we asked that question kind of just commands a bit of respect. Yeah. It's like, I don't want you recording this call, actually. I'm a Premier League football club. And if that gets into the wrong hands, I don't want people to be able to know what our discussions were. You know, but just asking the question is like that friendship thing as well within business. You know, people really lose sight of, you know, we're all humans. You know, it's about money, you know, the evil word. But fundamentally, if you can get on with someone and, you know, you feel as if, you know, you're going to get a good response to them and they're going to respond well to you, make your job easier, that's it.
That relationship is really important, isn't it? And again, if I was the chief exec of a football club, or even when I'm recruiting within my own team, I used a recruiter recently to find us 2 new hires that have started in the last week, and they're doing great and exceptional service we've received. But you want to be able to understand, we've worked for 2 weeks on this role. No one wants to join your team. Why? You know, this is really important information to have as a client. And actually, there's so many things you get from using a recruitment partner and a sponsorship partner, whereby actually no one wants to become your main stadium naming rights partner because you recently sacked your head coach. You've been unfairly treated on social media around. These things are really important for you to then go back to your peers and go, well, actually, we're not paying enough. We're not offering work from home. We're not, you know, flexible around this or these sorts of things. So there's a lot more to it than just finding a candidate. There's a whole process that goes alongside this, I think.
I know in episode 1, Adrian, you mentioned you're approaching that 10th year anniversary, which is the next question. You're approaching 10 years this year. What is the plan to mark that milestone?
I think I'm probably going to go to Boots, the chemist, and buy some just for men. Just
really
to
going for
tinge some of this grey out. But literally, 10 years of my life, I'm never going to get back. No, probably go to Greg's and maybe buy some donuts for the office. No, I don't know. I don't know. But we will do something. Right. You know, if someone would have turned around to me and said, you know, you'll be going into your 10th year in 2026, I'd have been like, okay, yeah, I'd take that. Yeah. But, you know, it's like, well, what does the next 10 years look like? You know, it's like 10 years goes very, very quickly and you don't actually fully appreciate how that time does go. You know, I've got 2 kids and, you know, my son's ending his you know, kind of school period at secondary school. And I'm like, I remember when he was like a little dot. Now, how the hell is he leaving school? So it's the same in business, you know, you end up just doing that much day in, day out, you know. It's like 10 years just comes and goes. But yeah, we'll do something. I've got a great team around me. You know, we'll probably go to McDonald's or something.
I want to have like a big networking event where we can thank all our clients for that period of time, have some guest speakers around some things and stuff like that. See if we've got it in the budget.
Well, you know,
we did mute a golf day at one point, didn't we?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, we'll have to watch that space then.
We'll do a podcast on it. We'll talk, you know, get a hangover the following day or something like that.
I think you mentioned actually this, Harry, about data and what you can provide. But I know, Ian, you've just hired somebody in data and insights. So what is that? Right? Why is it so important, do you think?
Yeah, it's critical in my opinion. I mean, there's lots of different, in this sort of sponsorship space, there's lots of different tools you can use to get data, get insights. There's things like K2, Sponsors United, etc. But to have a physical person that's there day in, day out, that understands the business, that understands the rights holders that we're talking to, that understands the brands that we're talking to, that can really do a deep dive into everything that we need as a business is fundamental. You know, I mean, I think I've mentioned previously, if we've got a rights holder and they're looking for a new front of shirt sponsor, let's just say, for example, we don't just chuck a load of spaghetti at a wall and just hope that one sticks, because 99% of the time, one's not going to stick, or it might stick, but it'll only stick for so long. Yeah. You know, so that's why it's really important for us to really understand, okay, well, what's the opportunity and what brands are really going to resonate with that opportunity? What's the why? And we say why all the time, you know, why is this brand going to take this opportunity, and what does it mean to their business? How does it match up with their objectives and what they want to achieve? And that's where Reece Charlton's our data and insights member of the team. That's where he comes in, and he'll do a real deep dive. So whenever we're looking and targeting brands for a particular opportunity, it'll be a real deep dive. Okay, well, these are the brands I think you should approach, and these are the reasons why. And not only that, he'll also help us with things like movers and shakers in the industry. You know, obviously marketing directors and CEOs and people like that are the kind of people that we want to build relationships with. They're the either key decision makers or key influencers. So we'll look at that. You know, what new investment has come into certain businesses, you know, where they might use that investment for sports sponsorship or sponsorship in general. Are particular brands entering new territories? You know, that kind of insight is really important to us, because if there is a UK brand, for example, you know, and they do really want to target India as a new territory, well, we've got a team out in India, you know, who have got relationships with huge amount of rights holders out there. So we've got that in our bow to literally go and target those particular rights holders with that particular brand and deliver that 360-degree service, really. But yeah, that's the reason, and it is a fundamental part of our business operation.
Yeah, sounds like a really important part of it. This is going back to episode 1, this question, which I'm imagining why it was sparked, is if an EPL club commercial director doesn't get a front of shirt sponsor deal for next season, relating again to that betting ban, and I think there's 14 clubs we said potentially could be going in next year. What does that actually mean for them?
Might be getting the chop.
Well, I mean, I suppose that's the obvious thing, isn't it?
I'll be honest with you, I've got hauled into the chairman's office when I was at West Brom. There was one time where I catastrophically ballsed up a shirt deal. I got greedy. Used to commoditise the shirt at West Brom. I think I did 6 shirt deals while I was there, maybe 5, 6, I can't remember exactly where it was, but we did one every year, and everyone's like, you must be a nutcase, like literally, why would you put yourself under that pressure every year of trying to find one? I was like, well, you know, the fact, as long as we stay in the Premier League, our value goes up, because we were always one of the cheapest shirt deals in the division. So it's like, well, I'm going to nick a couple of, you know, maybe 500 grand here or a mil, and you just kept on adding on every year, and obviously over that 5-6 years you go from that to that. But one year I remember really clearly, we had an offer, a very, very early offer in, which is really good money for a betting company, and I decided to kind of stall it a little bit, and it was embarrassing really, actually. The individual, I'm sure probably would speak to me now, but it probably wasn't my best friend for a couple of years. And I delayed on the basis we got an offer from someone else. The offer came in, and it wasn't like formalised. And then, cut long story short, it went very quiet for like 3 or 4 weeks. And I was like, oh my God. So every time in a board meeting or a review, it's like, yeah, this is the brand, we're just waiting for the offer. Anyway, the offer didn't come, and they literally retracted the verbal. So there was me left, and anyway, the other brand is like, no, I've waited too long, we've got to do another club. So I literally was left, I don't know, it must have been 2-3 weeks before the deadline for the shirt production. And I remember the chairman whacking me into his office and just saying, what are you doing? Yeah, why haven't you got this deal done? What you got to pull this one out of the fire. And he was like, pull it out of the fire or you're gone. And it was like, and I've sat in that office with the head coach being fired, and I know how it feels because I was literally privy to it. So I just thought, right, And so I literally went through every single contact that I'd got in my black book and just fired it out saying, literally, it wasn't a fire sale because I had to show growth.
Sure.
But fortunately, touch wood, we ended up getting one.
It happened.
If I was a commercial director now at a club, if my team walked out first game of the season in August without a shirt sponsor, I don't think that I would be there.
Yeah, I think when it comes to your kit assets, I think they're the non-negotiables. You need to get your kit assets done. I think they're the big ticket items. You've got secondary stuff like naming rights. It's kind of like if you do a naming rights deal, nice to have. Your kit assets, you don't go blank.
So commercial director, that's your number one priority. Get that front shirt.
Because effectively that is like that's the kind of the calling card really. Because if you're running that commercial function and the team that you're representing, the club you're representing, does not have a shirt sponsor on the front of the shirt on the biggest sporting platform in the world, it's kind of like really, unfortunately, all the eyeballs are on you.
Yeah.
It doesn't really send a very good message out to other brands that potentially might want to get into that club as well, because they'll be thinking, hang on, well, why does no one want to take up that front of shirt opportunity? They don't look after people well enough, or there might be various. Are they charging too much money to become a sponsor? Is it are they not offering value for money? So I think there's lots of different knock-on effects, impacts basically.
What I hadn't realised as well is that the benefit of getting it done early. Spoke to a championship club last year, and because it was so late to the deadline that they secured their front of shirt, they had to pay like an extortionate printing cost because the kits had to be printed late, or it affected the kit launch and all these sorts of things. So again, sometimes people haven't done next year's.
It's about £3 a logo. So if you're producing 100,000 shirts,
I think the challenge is there though. Just very very quickly is that, and I found it for many years. We were always like a yo-yo club. Normally at the bottom of the league, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like, certain brands will only want to align themselves with Championship football, not League One football, and the same with the Premier League. So a lot of the time, if you are in limbo, so you might not find out until the last game of the season as to whether you're going to be a Championship club, a Premier League club, or a League One club, which affects value, which affects the brand that you're going to be on, So there's lots of different challenges that you have to face that we had to on many occasions. That
makes it really complex, actually, without that stability. Like you were saying, Adrian, if you're in the Premier League, doing those 1 year deals, actually, it makes a lot of sense, really, doesn't it? It makes it a lot easier, I guess.
Yeah, it is easier. And I think where some clubs do fall into a trap around value of kind of what they value their asset, their shirt front as an example, is if they do overvalue it and the market is rejecting it, it's like, how long do you wait? It's kind of like, you can't keep waiting for someone to give you this big blank check that's literally not there. So, as I think I made reference to in the last podcast around Chelsea's front of shirt, there are loads of missed opportunities by not having a brand on there. So it's what's market value here and today, not 2 years ago, not 18 months ago. No, what was the market value for this season? If Chelsea go and win the league this year, right, what associated value do you have with winning the title, right? Yeah. And if you've got no sponsor on, you haven't got any chance for you to go. You could maybe simulate it, I assume. Someone could do some clever stuff with technology. But by not having that shirt sponsor doesn't enable you then to leverage that for another brand and say, well, actually, we only did a 1 year deal with these guys and they helped us out. But now we've won the league. We're now worth this. We're playing in the Champions League. All of a sudden you can then start to add your zeros on. But unless you've got a starting point, it's very, very short-sighted. And we've seen stuff like Notts Forest was another one. They were trying to hold out for a certain value and it kept on holding out. And, we heard on good authority, they didn't get what they wanted. They did have to drop. But think about all the lost time, effort and management by not just rejecting, where realistically you get a pretty good vibe in your first 5 offers.
Yeah.
If someone's offered you between that, and those are 5 companies that know the market pretty well, you're pretty much thereabouts. Unless you get someone that's completely, which is very rare, virtually doesn't exist. Someone doesn't know anything about the market and just give you whatever you want. Those brands do not exist. Well, I've not been fortunate enough to find one, but
Final listener question from now then. We assume your clients are all football, rugby and cricket, but what other areas have you worked on? And in fact, in the last episode, we talked about Battle of the Beasts and darts, and so it's quite expansive really, isn't it?
Yeah, we do lots in the sort of federation space. So governing bodies, Olympic sport governing bodies, F1, motorsport. We're doing a lot in esports at the moment in Saudi and sort of definitely seeing a steer towards that
Exactly the same. I mean, we're again going back to Reece and our head of data insights. Reece is always looking at, okay, well, what's that emerging sport? You know, what's that sport where actually, do you know what, it offers something a little bit different? And I suppose Dual Bits and Battle of the Beast is a testament to that, because it is totally different. It's something a little bit more unique. It offers something a little bit different, and I think brands are looking for that. You know, I think, you know, all agencies, all rights holders from football perspective are pitching brands right, left and centre in terms of front of shirt, sleeves, sponsorship, etc. Okay, well, what's that gap? Where's the gap? You know, is that motorsport? There's some of these motorsports that are coming through, like Extreme H. They're hydrogen-powered vehicles. You know, it offers, again, something a little bit different. There's angles there around sustainability, because, you know, that's the most efficient sort of from an energy perspective that you can have to power a vehicle. There's lots of different things. Paddle is becoming huge. Women's sports, you know, women's sport, which we see as a huge opportunity for us as a business, but also in general, that we want to really expand on. So yeah, we cut across everything. Our background is very much football, because that's what we played, that's what we've grown up with, that's what we worked in. However, our love and our passion is just working across sports in general, and creating some really cool partnerships, and obviously identifying some really good candidates that we can fit and put into those rights
Loads
holders.
of others: golf, boxing, MMA. We've worked with loads of race courses. You know, hospitality sales is hospitality sales, if you will.
Yeah.
And usually you're led by really good candidates in certain areas that I'm looking to move into this. Can you help me support that? And I mean, the list's never ending.
Yeah, and the good thing is there's a lot of crossover, because, you know, obviously football is seen as, you know, kind of the world sport in it has been for many years. But there's loads of benefits of working in the industry, so we can transfer some of our knowledge into emerging sports or emerging events. For example, I go out to see Battle of the Beast, and we're like, first thing I clocked was, oh God, I'm not happy with the way those banners look. You know, I wouldn't get away with that if I was in the Premier League. But look, it's a production. It's not kind of, does it need to be as polished as a, you know, Saturday in front of Manchester United on Super Sunday? But there are things that we could maybe shift from football into that environment that they haven't thought about, because they're not used to considering it. But on the other hand, they've also got things from a content perspective that football clubs can work for. So what we're trying to do is we're literally trying to make sure that we get a real good kind of flavour of different assets and different opportunities, because that fundamentally can enable us to take to, whether it's a client, a rights holder who've got an opportunity for us to sell, whether it's someone wants to buy it. Actually, we've seen this work really well. Why don't you give this a go? Or here's an example of it. And we can literally wire them on email, like a video link to the activation that says, oh, can you believe they did an eating challenge at, you know, Stoke City? You know, the players in the dressing room were like shoving cakes down their face. You know, you can, with technology now, what's available to us, the world is our oyster, really. And sport is such a brilliant content creation platform. And, you know, my kids are good examples, and many other children around. They're just obsessed by what's on their phones. And, you know, they are the future. They are the individuals that are going to be spending money in this arena. They're going to be the people that are, you know, are negotiating deals as well in potential as things, you know, move. But yeah, I think the bandwidth for us being really just football driven is kind of like closeted us a little bit from the fact that it's all we knew. But now, 10 years down the track, we've done deals and lots of sports that have benefited us.
Well, look, if you want to get in touch, do go on YouTube or any of the platforms, LinkedIn, for example, look up Sporting Group International or Sporting Jobs. You can submit a question there, and we might do another Q&A in the future. There has been a little bit of admiration for the sporting merch that we've got in the background behind us as well, which I should say, things don't quite appear as I mean, look, what's going on here?
That's
I've won the Tetley Cup.
prize trophy. How's that got there?
There we go. And also, just to lift the curtain from behind the scenes, how many cushions are we all sat on right now?
I'm on one.
We ordered the wrong table, didn't we? So we're all sat on a few.
I've got like the whole back of the sofa that I'm sat on.
Legs dangling on the chair.
Pretty much.
And just talking about the memorabilia, I think a few people have commented on the strategically put scarf in the corner here of the Birmingham City.
I don't think anyone commented that, if I'm honest. I mean,
they have.
Transparency. No, nobody's mentioned it, but, you know, maybe they will now, Ian. Maybe they will. All right, it's a good place to leave it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.